Vaccines. What exactly are they? How safe are they? Can they harm me? Are they beneficial? Can they kill me? No, I don't think they're that bad. I mean, there's a lot of scientists that work on them to make sure they're safe, right? Right? But wait, can I even trust those scientists? What if it's all fake and they don't know what they're doing? What is up, everybody? Hope you are doing great today. Today we're going to be discussing a really important topic. It is probably more on your mind now than ever before, especially with all the COVID stuff going on. We're going to be discussing vaccines, how they affect me, you, and all our loved ones. We're going to be discussing the costs and the benefits of getting vaccinated. So stay tuned and let's get started. Now I know this is a science video, but we have to start off with a little bit of history. Around 100 years ago, mothers, not doctors, not scientists, were the first to use vaccines. They didn't know they were using vaccines, they didn't even know it was called vaccines, and they didn't know exactly what they were doing. But they did it, and it worked, kinda. Now how and why would they do this? Well, during those times, children would inevitably get smallpox. If you were a kid, you're gonna get smallpox. So the mothers saw that every time a child got smallpox, they wouldn't get it again. So what they did is they took scabs of kids that were infected, and they inoculated the children that were healthy with them in hopes that they would get it, but in a weaker version, and that the kids would be able to overcome it easily, and they would never get it again. And it worked. Kinda. Now, you should not do this. Vaccines today are made completely different. There's a lot of science and a lot of research that goes into making them. They have actually saved millions of lives for the past 100 years. Let me give you one example. The Spanish flu of 1919. It took millions of lives. To be exact, 500 million were infected and 50 million were dead. Now, during those times, transportation was really limited. Yes, they had cars and airplanes and trains, but they were not as advanced as we have them today, and their ranges weren't that long. So people going from continent to continent, or from even country to country, that was almost unheard of. But even though with all those limitations, people all around the world got it. It started off with a few, then hundreds, then thousands, then millions. Now those 500 million that got infected were approximately 25% of Earth's population at that time. That number has been brought down to less than 1% today, all because of vaccines. As stated by Dr. Lisa Jackson, a senior investigator at the Kaiser Permanente Washington Health Institute, vaccines have saved more lives today than any other medical intervention. Now, she also claims that diseases that people think have been eradicated, like measles, are not really eradicated. They're still around, but they've just gone down because of people getting vaccinated. Now, one other thing people have been saying is that vaccines are harmful to children, which is really not true. There's been so much research done showing that these vaccines are really safe. In addition to Dr. Lisa, a group funded by the CDC led by Dr. Frank DeStefano has concluded that there's no connection between autism and children vaccinations. Now it goes without saying, vaccines do have some mild side effects, and that's completely natural. Now many think that doctors are trying to push vaccines onto people because it's a marketing scheme. They're just trying to make money off of them. But if you think about it, that's really not true. Like take for example, meningitis. A treatment for it is about $2,000. But the vaccine is about $200. So doctors make more if you actually get sick. But it's unethical. Despite these people claiming that vaccines are harmful and they're just a marketing scheme from pharmacists and doctors, I think those vaccines that have been tested for 5 years and that prevent contagious diseases should be government mandated and paid for by the government. The only exception are those who are immunocompromised or have allergies against these vaccines. They will be protected through a process called herd immunity, a process in which if everybody takes the vaccine and are protected, the ones that don't take the vaccine because they're not able to, they will be indirectly protected also. Now, to understand how vaccines work, we have to know a little bit about viruses and bacteria and how our bodies react to them. Viruses are pretty simple. They're made up of two components, DNA and proteins. The proteins protect the DNA. They actually have two main functions. The first one is to latch on our cells. The second one is to inject the DNA into our cells. Now, viruses don't produce toxins. But the reason why they're so harmful is because once they're in our cells, they hijack our machinery and the cell is destroyed. Like literally, the cell explodes to let all the new viruses that are produced out. And the more it does this, the more cells are destroyed and your tissue starts breaking down. And viruses are non-living. They can't reproduce on their own. They have to have a host. And they actually have very, very specific hosts. Bacteria, on the other hand, they're living. They're tiny little single-celled organisms that produce toxins in our bodies. or they produce enzymes that break down our tissue. That's why we feel really bad if we have a bacterial infection. Now, how exactly does our body react to all this? I mean, think about it. A few hundred years ago, before any medications or anything, how do people live if they got an infection? Well, in reality, your body does most of the work when it comes to dealing with infections. Medications help some, but your white blood cells do most of the work. Now, there are multiple parts to white blood cells, but the two parts we're going to talk about are the memory cells and the killer cells. Now, white blood cells are able to differentiate between things that are supposed to be in your body, like your proteins, and things that are from outside, like viruses and bacteria. They can read the protein on viruses, like the outer shell, and make memory cells that remember all that information. So if your body's attacked again, they can respond a lot faster, and the disease is taken care of before it can harm you. In the case of bacteria, those memory cells are able to remember the toxins and the bacterial DNA. So if ever it's attacked again, it's able to take care of them before they can harm us. And the T cells, or the killer white cells, are the ones that take care of all this and destroy any viruses or bacteria that enter our bodies. Now let's get into the fun stuff. What exactly are vaccines? How dangerous are they? Well, there's 4 types of vaccine. Now the first 2 are really similar. It's either fragment vaccines or inactivated. Let's start off with the fragment vaccines. That's made up of parts and pieces of the virus or the bacteria that we're trying to get vaccinated against, and we're injected with it. What happens is our bodies, our white cells, are able to recognize those proteins or those parts of the virus or bacteria, and they're able to make memory cells. So if we're ever attacked by the real thing, the wild version of the virus or bacteria, we're able to detect it and destroy it before it harms us. The second one in this category is the inactivated vaccine. Those are made up of inactivated viruses. What that is they take the virus and they deactivate it through chemical processes, so it's not able to attack us or latch on our cells or inject its DNA. So the body's still able to recognize it, but the virus is not able to harm us at all. So after the body recognizes it, it makes those memory cells, and if in the future we're ever attacked by the wild version, our body's able to recognize it before it's able to do any harm. Now the other 2 are a little bit more controversial, because people think they're dangerous, but they're really not. The first is a toxin vaccine, which takes toxins produced by bacteria and they inject them into us. They do this in very, very small quantities, so the toxin is not able to affect us, but our bodies are able to detect it and make the memory B cells we need. And if we're ever attacked by the bacteria, we're able to take care of it before it harms us. The second one is live virus vaccines, which means they take live viruses that are weakened and they inject them into us. Why do they do this? It's because this is more effective. Our body builds a longer immunity to it, so it works for a longer period of time. They're a little bit more controversial because people think that those viruses are alive and they're gonna attack us and they're gonna harm us, but in reality they don't, because they're so weakened that they aren't able to function at all. And as the other ones, our bodies are able to detect them and destroy them before they're able to do anything on our bodies. And the last one we just talked about, the live virus vaccine, they're not recommended for people who are immunocompromised, because their bodies are going to have a harder time dealing with them. Now let's address some major misconceptions. Now the biggest misconcept is that children are more likely to get autism if they get vaccinated. The second biggest misconcept is that all the major diseases are eradicated, so why would we give our children vaccines? Now the misconcept about autism grew because of a compound named thimerosal that was found in the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, and that compound is derived from mercury. And mercury has been known to cause mental problems. So when people recently saw that there was a rise in autism, they just connected it to vaccines, right? Wrong. There was research conducted by the Institute of Medicine in 2011 that tested 8 different vaccines, including the measles, mumps, and rubella, and found that there was no connection between vaccines and autism. And thimerosal is only a derivative of mercury, so it really doesn't have the same effect as mercury at all. And that wasn't the only research that was done. There were 7 other groups that conducted similar experiments, and all came to the same conclusion. Now let's get to the second misconception. Why would we give vaccines to our kids for things like measles? Aren't they eradicated, right? No, wrong. In 2019 alone, there were 1,300 cases of confirmed measles, which proves that the diseases are still out there. And the more that parents don't vaccinate their kids, the more these diseases are going to spread. Now let's get into the ethics of all this. Let's start off by saying that immigrants coming into the US have no options. They have to get vaccinated, regardless of their age, sex, culture, religion, ethnicity. None of that is taken into account. Same thing goes to children. If you want your child to go to school, they have to be vaccinated. If you're a college student, you have to get the meningitis vaccine. So how come not everybody else has to get those vaccines? Are people that are born in America, don't go to school, don't go to college, all immune to diseases? No, we're all the same. Now I think the government should make everybody get vaccinated. Not just those who go to school, not just those who are not born here. Everybody should get vaccinated. Because those people who don't get vaccinated are not only harming themselves, they're harming those around them too. Think about people who are immunocompromised, the kids, the elderly, those who are not able to get vaccinated. If you don't get vaccinated and you catch something, they're going to catch it too. So we need to do our part and get vaccinated so we can protect ourselves and those around us. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to leave links in the description for all the sources I got my information from. And please guys, consult with your doctor before making any decisions.